Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As you've been told, my name, he has done the introduction. You can call me Florence. Today, I'm here to talk about the role of African diaspora in the economic development of Africa and to build bridges between Africa and the external partners. To begin, the African diaspora is not monothelic. We are diverse, multifaceted, and multi-generational demographics spanning every continent and socio-economic status. There are many diasporas left home or were raised abroad for a variety of reasons, including war, conflict, insecurity, for the lack of economic opportunity, yet we remain connected with our homelands. Others grew up abroad and maintained a relationship with the continent in Africa by any means, either through regular visit, community language school of establishment, international business ties. Even more significant, however, the emerging diaspora youth leaders raised abroad and seeking to forge deeper relationships with their homelands, as will be revealed later as I read. The other shortcoming with what diaspora got to do, it is that it falls completely short of recognition and recognizing the diaspora added value, which is far beyond economic remittance and sporadic tourism, even though remittance continue to be the largest form of diaspora contribution, amounting to 40 billion a year to support livelihood and development. It is not the only form of significant delivery from diaspora. The other shortcoming with what diaspora got to do with, it fell completely short of recognizing the added value. The last decade's sudden explosion of technology, social media, and new models of change has resulted in more contribution from the diaspora, particularly around long-term development and advocacy. Here are just few examples. 1, promoting development. Through innovation, broad-based network, and tried and true outreach, diaspora are taking their love for Africa and applying it with ingenuity for good. Diaspora entrepreneurs and organizations are widening spaces in the continent for African-led development and growth. Initiatives such as Villages in Act, Face Africa, and Akilidada. Akilidada was originated from Kenya. And Kenya is in my country. I come from Kenya. I'm Kenyan. I love Kenya. Kenya is in East Africa. So Ugandans are my neighbors. Diaspora entrepreneurs, organizations were educated abroad, most of them, funded by diaspora who arrived to states at a young age. These are the people who founded Akilidada and these others like the Face of Africa. Were raised entirely abroad, and those moved to Africa for one reason or the other. The new face of diaspora and development is continuing to change. Support for humanitarian emergencies when disaster strikes Africa, greatest sources, has consistently proven to be its people. Diaspora group are crucial lifetime access those in need by sending messages and delivering help. The current drought ravaging in East Africa spurs Africa on the continent and abroad into action. Within weeks, Kenyans, South Africans, Nigeria, the broader Horn of Africa diaspora, and more help to raise millions of dollars for the relief. Somalis, feminine motivated Somalis abroad to relocate and help people most in need. Efforts such as the Global Somali Response. This is an organization which was started by the Somalis, who are also our neighbors in East Africa, the other part of Kenya. They started this organization and they're doing a lot of work at home as much as there's still war, but we should appreciate also as much as, yes, we have our problems, but at least there is before there was a larger Somali country, nation, and now at least there's a Somaliland, which is running, which is cut off from the larger Somali. And I think it's a good achievement because when the war broke out more than 20 years ago in Somalia, people ran to Europe and other places. They came to Kenya and many other. But for these people to come back and also, initiate the other part and start a nation within a nation, I think to me that is an achievement. To have a really government which is running with ministers and everybody within a war zone country, I think that is an achievement. Building bridges between Africa and non-Africans. Africa is not bound by its borders. As Nigerians, American journalist Dayo Olopade call it, Africa is the bright continent. Its people are a rich source of energy, life, and innovation. They are the bridges between countries and continents. By celebrating our rich cultural heritage, diversity, and histories, relationships are forged with foreigners, including those unable to visit the continent. Themselves, photos and stories and shares have of diaspora community centers. Myths are dispelled, messages are conveyed. Because for a very long time also there was a way the African continent, it was being looked at. But being an African and coming from Africa, there's so much. As much, yes, I appreciate we still have, we call the two things, like the issue of corruption, the issue of, but I think we are really going far. Adding new layers to the African narrative, stories of Africa development and its need must be told by those on the continent first. By diaspora to help facilitate those stories, they add deeper layers to Africa's story and earn an asset. As a diaspora grow in presence and participation, so too will this narrative. In addition to storytelling, diaspora own businesses, faith-based organization, community organization, youth association, private entrepreneurs, eager to carry Africa message to the newcomers and supporters alike. Helping to shape Western and regional foreign policy agenda and offering models of civic participation. New advocacy groups, civic associations, and diaspora networks have also flourished in the West, particularly around conflict resolution, networking, and economic trade with the continent. Assuming diaspora apply effective advocacy strategies, they can help foreign policy priorities and shift analyses of Africa betterment. Government, organization, and decision makers recognize this power and potential of the African diaspora. They understand that beyond their wallets, diasporas are legitimate stakeholders in Africa's future. The African Union has already declared the African diaspora as the 6th region of the African Union. The United States, United Kingdom, Europe, and various African countries have also created initiatives and opportunities to engage with diaspora directly. I suppose that more investments must be made in Africa, leaders on the continent to create the next generation of people. But having worked for travel with the elders myself as a person, and having had a chance to learn from African leaders in the diaspora, I can personally attest to the power and notion of the people. Because you are, wherever we go, wherever the African diaspora, but still people keep to their links, some of the cultures, as much as people have moved to other countries, other continents, but they still keep most of the rich cultures. It is clear that diaspora have quite a lot to do with Africa. because Africa has quite a lot to do with the diaspora. African diaspora and African development. To this day, we continue to lose the best among ourselves because the lights in the developed world shine brighter. This is not my word, but the word from the late Nelson Mandela. We must redouble our efforts to involve diaspora and the migrants in the development process in order to widen our constituents, again more support and increase our knowledge about development. A diaspora is a community of people living outside their country of origin. Today, African migrants are part of a large-scale worldwide diaspora transnational community, which is becoming one of the major global voices, shaping the direction trends in the 21st century. One of the main reasons the size of diaspora is estimated at 175 million worldwide. $10 million who are migrants from Africa from 1965, 75 million lived abroad, equivalent like 2.3%. African diaspora in Europe, the migration of Africans to Europe has increased gradually since late 1950s. It began with the arrival of African seamen from places, asylum seekers, refugees due to the war zones in most of the African countries. And it has been increasing due to largely to the arrival of African students coming to Europe to study from different parts of Africa. For a number of reasons, that trickle started to gradually increase from the beginning of 1980s. Some immigrants left Africa because of the economic stagnation, lack of future prospects, or out of spirit, pure adventure, desire, discover the world, seek their fortunes, and also asylum seekers and refugees because of the war in part of the African country. These groups were mostly young, and their motives were similar to other immigrants. I'm reading about African diaspora and African development, the background, African diaspora worldwide, and diaspora international efforts. One of the most resilient creatures of contemporary globalization, the increases of migration around the world. Mass migration is one of the main global forces shaping the world in the 21st century. Given the abject poverty, much of Africa, such as studying urgently needed now, more than ever, it is vital to improve our understanding of the African diaspora in Europe and the rest of the world for their contribution to the education and eradication of poverty and development in Africa. In current development database of Africa in Europe, the invaluable contribution of the African diaspora is completely ignored. The development statistic and the needs does not receive sufficient attention from the policymakers. More important, there's a growing realization among African diaspora in Europe and other parts of the world that they have responsibility to help their home and the continent as a whole. And the African diaspora who believe that they are in better position to positively influence the overall development of Africa at present because of their sizable presence in the economic and political power in the entire West. Financial remittance provide many of African poor, but because of these finances they get from their brothers, their relatives who are abroad, it really helped the livelihood of our African brothers and sisters back at home. Much of the African diaspora in Europe originated in Africa, and most of them are from the poorest country in Africa and most war zone countries. And during the old days, this country was such as Angola, Congo, Somalis, and up to now still, as much as yes, we have war still in Congo, we have in Somalia, but also we appreciate so much is being done. And most of the effort also come from the African diaspora. To recap this demonstration of between the African diaspora and financial remittance and poverty alleviation development in Africa. This is also observation of some analysts who argue that migrants' financial remittance are perhaps one of those effective ways to reduce poverty, to work with some projects, and to reduce poverty in the world. According to most of the researchers who have done this kind of work, they can attest to this. I also want to talk about African diaspora and private business in Africa. African diaspora promotes overseas business enterprises with their native homes in Africa. They undertake this activity by setting up their own enterprises, respective country in Europe and the rest of the world by collaborating with local businessmen and women back in Africa. Some African diaspora have entered into collaboration with different types of entrepreneurs in Europe and the rest of the world. Most of them have come back to Africa, and even they bring back their colleagues, their friends, their business partners to start many businesses in Africa. Maybe to give one example, like now the BMW and the Mercedes, they still have before they used to have a sale, like a sales showroom in Africa, that is in Kenya, but now they assemble their cars from Kenya and sell to the rest of Africa. And according to their statistics to showing whatever, since they started for the last 2 years, they have made so much money that they could not make in other parts of the world where they were selling their. So I think also this is something that we should appreciate, the work of the diaspora, that also they are doing this back home. 3 reasons why base African diaspora involve business activity both here in Europe and in Africa can be noted. The first, that many African diaspora have difficulty in finding meaningful employment in the host countries. So I think it's not also a bed of roses. I think the world is changing all over, and it's not only in Africa where we can feel there is a pinch. I think even in Europe also. Most of the people who came here, they knew it was a bed of roses, but they've come here also, it's not that easy. Even getting those jobs they expected to get. So I think things are changing all over, and we should appreciate. Knowledge and network in the Europe that they have accumulated, businesses knowledge network, and that they are wish to make available to Africa. The third factor is that some of African diaspora being very familiar with the actual needs of Africa and development condition in their respective homelands. Family, the actual needs capture. Important, the technology gap between Africa and Europe. They benefited from that technology gap, collecting products from here and sending them back home, but not for free, also to sell and make a profit out of it. African diaspora invest their financial, different business sector, and also collaborate with variety of local traders in Africa. However, so far, they have many members from different countries who have stayed behind and in whom they place greatest trust. Consulates in Africa diaspora invest family, and that is how they are able to do business with Africa continent. I don't know whether there's any question or any opinion, observation.
So thank you for the presentation. We can have the questions now, or we can start to arrange the panel discussion and take the questions later. How do you prefer it? So do we have a question, a specific question to the presentation that we had? Okay, so we'll have two questions.
I just would like a clarification on what you said that the diaspora has been helping with selling or manufacturing cars in Africa. I didn't quite get that.
Assembling. There is a difference between assembling and manufacturing.
Where exactly is that happening?
Kenya, in Nairobi.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you. And another question here.
Manufacture is when you do the things, and assembly is when you close the laundry.
I just wanted to find out, how does the diaspora work with the consulates and the embassies in Germany?
In Germany, I think they work with different embassies depending on where they're coming from. If I'm coming from Uganda, obviously I'll work with the Embassy of Uganda. If I'm coming from Kenya, I'll work with the Embassy of Kenya. If I'm coming from Ghana, I'll do the same. This is how they work. But also we appreciate that there are organizations, different organizations where they work together and channel to different embassies. And most of them, they even do direct business actually, because there are a lot of layouts which have been made and put in place in different countries, like in East Africa, like the way I was saying about Uganda. Also in Kenya we have, and many other countries. We have changed our policies and to make it easy for people to come and do business. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for answering the questions. So once again, if we can applaud our